by the tragic event.
On WhatsApp, your personal private messages, they're yours. We can't read them.
And you'll never guess what I found.
We can't hear them. We can't see them. They're all private. On WhatsApp, no one can see or hear your personal messages. Not even us.
The hostel that we have this footage from, where the plane's tail and some of the fuselage and wheels appear to be embedded in. We know that there are at least 5 medical students there who perished when this plane, sort of landed on their heads at lunchtime.
It's remarkable. How could, with the initial reports of this plane crash, you wonder how it could be any worse. And it turns out it's landed on a hospital. You think that, well, that's probably as bad as it could get. We've been talking about miraculous escapes. It appears that the collision with the hospital could have been a great deal worse. We can see these images. That is part of one of the landing gear. We can see 3 of the wheels there upside down in the building. We can see, if we move on, there are other images. We can see part of the tail section. There we go, on the roof, or it's 2 stories up. Whether it's embedded, it's certainly stuck in the building, and we have I think the reverse angle of that from inside. A section of the fuselage there. I think that's the other part of that tail section. And the final picture, which is of the mess hall at the hospital, and in that table in the foreground, you can see plates that have got food on them. This happened right at lunchtime, and but the building, apart from the collision damage, and we can see the brickwork down and what have you, the building is still otherwise intact. The plane, clearly at this point, when it passes this building and hit this building, hadn't exploded. That explosion appears to have come a little later on, mercifully for those in this building, but not for those who were caught up in the vast explosion. That's the smoke from the explosion. But we've been watching all afternoon, haven't we, footage of what look like residential blocks, 5, 6 stories high, all fire damaged, all caught in that explosion. And now, with some caution, here's the survivor, the UK national, Vishwa Kumar Ramesh at Sky News have confirmed, has survived and walked away, it seems, from seat 11A of that plane. All of that is, I see, and I said this with some caution, given the way news has emerged this afternoon. Reuters are now saying more than 290 people were killed in this crash. They're citing a police officer in Ahmedabad, but not among them, remarkably, the British man who we just saw there.
Paul, let's just bring in now some reaction and some of the tributes that have been paid from around the world after what happened earlier on today. The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi released the following statement on X. He said, "The tragedy in Ahmedabad has stunned and saddened us. It's heartbreaking beyond words. In this sad hour, my thoughts are with everyone affected by it. I've been in touch with ministers and authorities who are working to assist those affected." Here, the King has tweeted, "My wife and I have been desperately shocked by the terrible events in Ahmedabad this morning. Our special prayers and deepest possible sympathies are with the families and friends of all those affected by this appallingly tragic incident across so many nations as they await news of their loved ones. I'd like to pay particular tribute to the heroic efforts of the emergency services and all those providing help and support at this most heartbreaking of time." Prime Minister Keir Starmer posted this message. He said, "The scenes emerging of a London-bound plane carrying many British nationals crashing in the Indian city of Ahmedabad are devastating. I'm being kept updated as the situation develops, and my thoughts are with the passengers and their families at this deeply distressing time." Foreign Secretary David Lammy has been speaking in the Commons and paid tribute to those impacted by the crash.
My thoughts, and I'm sure those of the entire House, are with those who've been affected by the tragic plane crash in India this morning. We know that British nationals were on board, and Mr. Speaker, I can confirm that the FCDO is working urgently with local authorities to support British nationals and their families, and has stood up a crisis team in both Delhi and in London.
Former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has also released a statement on X on behalf of him and his wife, Akshata, who is, of course, an Indian national. He says, "Akshata and I are deeply shocked and distressed by the news of the Air India tragedy. There is a unique bond between our two nations, and our thoughts and prayers go out to the British and Indian families who have lost loved ones today." Also, word from the UK Civil Aviation Authority. They've said that their thoughts and sympathies are with those affected by the Air India crash involving a London-bound flight. They are supporting the government and other relevant authorities in responding to this incident. British nationals who require consular assistance or who have concerns about friends or family can call. And there's a number here. It's 020 7008 5000. You're watching Sky News. We're covering one major breaking story today. We can confirm that a British national has survived an Air India plane crash. The plane was bound for London's Gatwick airport. The passenger's been named as Vishwas Kumar Ramesh. He is one of 53 British people on board a flight of 242 passengers. The Sky News has spoken to some of his family members who have verified that he is alive. This is him, an image of him in hospital after the plane crashed in Ahmedabad shortly after takeoff. Sadly, they haven't got news of another family member on the same flight. We can also show you the latest video now of the moment the plane took off and came down, and a warning, you may find these pictures distressing.
To arrive at the scene as teams search for any signs of life, and begin.
They provide a very clear understanding of what happened, and very frequently they give very good indications as to why. But other than searching for those, the investigation team really have got an enormous task on their hands.
And the plane itself, this particular model, how unusual is it? I mean, this is the first, as we're aware, that there's been a crash of this nature, but what is its kind of safety background?
Boeing 787, very statistically safe aircraft, as it were, large number of them in operation. It's a modern design. It's a high technology design. There have been a lot of news stories recently about Boeing, of course. It would be wrong to read across from the 737 MAX to the 787. It's a totally different airframe with, I dare say, until this event, an extraordinarily good record. This is the first proper hull loss accident we've had of one. And there are a huge number flying with most of the world's best airlines, accruing enormous number of flight hours. The acid test is this would not make me feel any differently about getting on board a 787 to go flying, and I would do that quite confidently.
That's very reassuring for those who are nervous about flying. You talked about the investigation that's going underway now and how the site itself is particularly difficult. I mean, it's difficult because obviously the huge amount of jet fuel, that will, of course, have obliterated a great deal of potential information, won't it?
Well, it depends what information you're talking about. As I said, the recorders are vitally important, and if they were operating, the systems feeding them were operating and sending the data to them to be recorded, that's great news. If not, then you're into recovering, for example, items from the flight deck to see what control positions were set at the time the aircraft came down. You're into looking at components around the aircraft, such as the landing gear and the flap actuators, to see what position they were in, and therefore what position the flaps were in. And that is generally not badly disrupted by fire. You know, we're talking about large physical components there, and several of them. Beyond that, yes, I mean, the destruction is tremendous. I think that the problems here with structural integrity of buildings, structural integrity of the remains of the aircraft, the fact that regrettably, of course, there's a significant amount of human remains which will need to be dealt with, I'm sure, in the appropriate way. Those are going to make this one of the most challenging sites to work on, I dare say, in the history of accident investigation.
And what about the international perspective on this? Of course, you'll have Indian air investigators, Boeing's air investigators from the States presumably will want to get involved. Plus, we know that the UK air authorities are also sending 4 people across also. And I imagine that Canada and Portugal will also want to be involved too.
Well, it's not a question of who wants to be involved. Annex 13 to the International Civil Aviation Organization sets out how these investigations are done. And it says that certain states have a right either to participate or at least to witness the investigative activity. And so component manufacturers and airframe manufacturers, therefore Boeing and GE and so forth, are represented by and led by their state investigators. So it's not that Boeing turn up with a team. The Federal Aviation Authority will turn up with a team, and the NTSB will turn up with a team with Boeing at hand to provide technical guidance. The UK team will be there partly because of the large number of UK nationals involved here. But of course, there will undoubtedly be UK manufactured components around the aircraft, which confer another set of rights. Then it's down to the investigator in charge and his or her team. And very frequently, although one might attend as what's called an expert to one of these investigations with really no right to participate in the team, very often, if one is an experienced investigator with an authority or an organisation with a track record, one is welcomed with open arms and gets involved right in the nitty-gritty of the investigative activity. So yes, a large international group carrying out the investigation is going to be very lengthy. My hope is, first, that the recorders contain good evidence, and second, that evidence is analysed and publicised promptly. Far too often we see investigations carried out where early on there's very clear evidence as to what's happened, and then we wait years for a report to be published which contains an awful lot of detail, not all of which is terribly relevant.
You said it's going to be very lengthy. What would be a ballpark estimate, would you say, before we have some kind of initial idea of what may have caused this? Well,
I'd like to reach for a piece of string. I mean, certainly years. I would expect, I mean, to publish a final report on this inside 2 years, I think would be an extraordinary achievement. If it were to take 5, I wouldn't be remotely surprised.
Wow. OK, so 2 to 5 years potentially for the families at least to get accidents. Maybe they may get some indication before then, but we don't know. Tim Atkinson. No, you were going to say you wouldn't.
I was just going to say on that important point, the families, certainly the UK families, will be talking to specialist individuals who will be advising them, and I would hope that the AAIB personnel present will be passing appropriate information confidentially to them to help them through understanding their loss. And that is certainly how I have sought to do this in the past myself, and how it is done at the very best.
Tim Atkinson, aviation consultant, thanks very much for joining us. Well, let's just show you now the latest video that we've just received this afternoon of the moment the plane took off and then came down again. And a warning, you may find these pictures distressing. Just very powerful images there. Well, the British passenger who survived has been named as Vishwas Kumar Ramesh. He was one of 53 British people on board the flight, which was carrying 242 passengers. There were also 2 pilots, 10 members of crew as well. Mustn't forget them. Sky News has spoken to Vishwas's family members, and they have verified he was on the plane and that he is still alive after the plane crashed in Ahmedabad shortly after takeoff. They have spoken to him. This is an image from his hospital bed. They have spoken to him since he escaped this. They, though, have not heard from another relative who they believe was on this flight. Well, let's bring in Paul Kelso, our correspondent, who's been following this. I mean, it is desperately sad, isn't it? 242 passengers and crew, Indians, Britons, Portuguese, Canadian, 2 pilots, 10 members of crew, each of them devastating loss for all of their families. We spent most of the day believing that there were no survivors, from what we were told from the Indian authorities down there on the ground. And then, astonishingly, this afternoon, news that there is one survivor. He happens to be British, and we happen to have an image of him, and we've spoken to his family.
Absolutely, and he appears to have walked away, which is even more remarkable on top of all of that. Yes, we were working on the assumption, based on comments from the Commissioner of Police in Ahmedabad, it should be said, that there were no survivors from the plane crash. Then we heard from the Chief Executive of Air India, who referred to injured passengers being taken by local authorities to local hospitals. We had to double-check that we heard him right, because we'd had no reference to survivors. And then this emerging first in the Hindustan Times, but now confirmed by Sky News, that Vishwas Kumar Ramesh, we can see him here in hospital with clear facial injuries, also reported to have some injuries to his chest, but not severe, according to these reports. Had been in seat 11A. Our colleague in India told us they'd seen the boarding pass that he'd had, and there is some footage on social media we haven't verified that claims to show him walking away from the site of the crash. He's getting treatment in hospital here. He's given a quote, a conversation attributed to him by the Hindustan Times, who provided this image as well, in which he said 30 seconds after takeoff there was a loud noise and then the plane crashed. It all happened very quickly. So an account we've just been hearing about the complexity of this investigation and how long it might take, but to have at least one first-person account will doubtless help investigators, and this will give some hope. We said that some hope to those who are waiting for news of those on the plane, be they in Britain, in India, 7 Portuguese on board and 1 Canadian. It will give them all hope, because the chief executive of the airline had talked about injured passengers in the plural, and we know of one who's British, which is wonderful news for his family and for him. But there'll be hope, as long as it's not proved otherwise. There's not confirmation otherwise that passengers haven't survived, and very, very many have not survived this crash.
Yeah, indeed, Paul. Well, we were talking about the investigation and what may have caused it. Earlier this afternoon, I spoke to Terry Tozer. Now, he's a former airline pilot and author of the book Confessions of an Airline Pilot, Why Planes Crashed. I asked him for his thoughts on what kind of problems the pilot may have faced.
Any public transport aircraft is designed to suffer a major failure at a critical point of takeoff and then continue safely and clear all obstacles. And so, you know, any of the predictable failures will be part of the design of the aircraft to be able to be coped with and flown away safely. What you can't do is cheat physics, and if an aircraft is designed to take off with a certain flap setting and that flap setting is not present, then it simply won't perform as designed. Now, if indeed there were no flaps, as it appears to be in that film footage, were they not set before takeoff, or did they retract too soon after takeoff? Before takeoff, the pilots would get a lot of configuration warnings telling them that something was not correct for takeoff. So it would be a surprise if that were the case. So then we have to wonder why the flaps retracted early, and obviously that is something that one can only speculate on, because it's too early to know.
So what impact would the flaps being in the potentially wrong position have on the plane's ability to climb?
It would be fundamental. You know, the aircraft will be designed, this is all worked out very scientifically. There will be performance data, which the aircraft will be designed to meet, and it would meet those requirements in the very specific configuration it's designed to have when it takes off. So you would have takeoff flap settings, and power settings and all the other stuff that goes with a pre-takeoff check. And it will be designed to meet the requirements with everything correct. And if the flaps aren't set, or you don't have flaps at any point before the correct time to retract them, it's going to degrade the performance. And so, you know, it simply cannot fly and climb away without the correct flap setting.
So fundamentally, if the flap setting is wrong, could that cause a plane to crash? I mean, there's nothing that the pilots could do?
Well, I mean, it would depend how much time they had, and this crew had very little time to react to it. I suppose if they had retracted unintentionally, they could have reset them if they'd noticed that that was the problem. I mean, we are only assuming that that might be the problem. It seems to be a reasonably logical explanation for a well-designed aircraft sinking to the earth in this way without climbing as designed. I can't think of another situation that would have caused that. I mean, obviously you have issues with engine failures and what have you, but you know, if we were seeing an aircraft with the flaps correctly set, then we'd be looking for some other kind of possible issue. But it does rather point to that. Now, why they're in that position, you know, it's too early to say.
What about the fact that the landing gear was down? How significant is that?
Well, it won't have helped them because it's extra drag. But I mean, normally the process after takeoff would be, with all the settings correct, the aircraft leaves the ground, and the first thing the crew will be looking for is to ensure that it's climbing as required. When you can see that it is, then you would raise the undercarriage, and then you would later on, much later on, you would raise the flaps. So were that to be done the wrong way round, you would have lack of climb performance, extra drag from the undercarriage, and a result rather like the one we've seen. Now, why that should happen, who knows? Presumably, if the recorders and everything like that have survived this, that will be what the aircraft investigators will be looking at.
Well, let's remind you of the main development in this story this hour. Sky News can confirm that a British national has remarkably survived an Air India plane crash. The plane was bound for London's Gatwick airport. The passenger is Vishwash Kumar Ramesh. He was 53 Britons on board this flight. There were 242 passengers on board, as well as 10 members of crew and 2 pilots. Well, Sky News has spoken to some of his family members. They have verified that he was on the plane and that they've spoken to him since. He is alive after that plane crashed shortly after takeoff. This image is taken from hospital where he was taken. Let's take a look at the timeline of events from the information that we have so far. The Air India plane took off from the western Indian city of Ahmedabad en route to London, to Gatwick Airport. It was just a minute after taking off from the airport that the Boeing 787-8 crashed. As you can see from the map on your screen, the last recorded position of the plane shows it was only 625 feet into the air. It crashed into a residential building housing doctors. A video of the crash and the aftermath has been coming in throughout the day. We are going to show you again images of the plane taking off and then coming down shortly afterwards. It shows the jet crashing behind some airport buildings that you might find distressing. Well, let's bring in our correspondent, Paul Kelso. And Paul, as we look at those images, I'm just struck. It sort of reminds you of when you throw a paper plane as a child, doesn't it? It seems to... It takes off and then it just comes down very, very gently. It looks like it's almost quite controlled. But, of course, it is coming down at speed from a great height onto a residential area.
Yeah, it does.
Vishwash Kumar Ramesh, I think we can bring you his image. He was apparently sitting in a 40-year-old from the UK. He was visiting family out there. Remarkably, he appears to have survived. Sky News has spoken to his family this afternoon. More on this and all the rest of the day's news after this break.
Looking for a gift that'll make your dad's day? Try Aldi. With a saving of over 30%, the price will make your day too. When it's Father's Day, it's scanner time.
At Vodafone, get the new Google Pixel 9a and save up to £924 when you trade in an eligible phone. Plus, experience the exclusive Circle to Search feature, available only on Android, helping you to search fast and find what you need without switching apps. Go online or in-store today. Ends 12th of June. Vodafone.
Win a dream design contract. Realise you have to do a lot of business admin work before you can start the actual design work. Save time by using Intuit QuickBooks to send personalised invoices. Get paid faster. Win the next dream design contract. Manage and grow your business all in one place. Intuit QuickBooks.
When you don't have time for dirt, reach for... with a new scrubbing strip to effortlessly zap those pesky splats. Easier scrubbing, faster cleaning. Time's up for dirt with the just-in-time shine of Flash Speed Mop. Back to clean in a flash.
With 3, save £336 on the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra. And claim a Galaxy Tab A9 Plus worth £259 when you buy today. Search 3 or head in-store today. Life needs a big network.
OK, mate, gotta go. I'm off to a celebrity dinner party.
Hello, it's Robbie Williams.
I brought something delicious.
Felix.
Cats do what they want when they want to. Don't feel any need to impress you. Live like your Felix. It's great to be a cat.
Purina. Introducing the new fragrances of Comfort Scent Booster Elixir with up to 10 times more freshness that goes on. And on. And on. And on. Wow. First pour your favourite comfort conditioner, then add your Scent Booster Elixir. With its bead-infused formula and scent lock technology to get that fully fresh all day long. The all-new Comfort Scent Booster Elixir. Now that's next level fresh.
You know how we're covered by Sun Life's guaranteed over 50 plan?
You don't look covered.
Thinking about your future has got us thinking about our own.
We're becoming naturists.
When our time comes, there'll be a guaranteed cash payout.
Search Sun Life Plan today and get a free gift card.
Governments have done strange and even terrible things in the name of national interest, including scientific projects so shocking they are kept secret for decades. Now it's time to bring these strange secrets to light.
Secrets Declassified with David Duchovny, Tuesdays at 9 on Sky History.
Life is a story we get to embrace every day.
Good evening, it's 5 o'clock. I'm Matt Barbett. You're watching the News Hour on Sky News. 60 minutes of news, analysis and interviews. We begin with our top story this evening. A plane heading to London carrying 242 people crashes in India. 53 British citizens were on board the Boeing 787 flight to Gatwick. The King says he is desperately shocked by the crash. But there is a miracle amidst the horror as one passenger, a British national, survives the crash. An investigation is now underway into what caused the Boeing 787 Dreamliner to lose height so soon after it took off. Well, the flight was due to land at Gatwick in the next couple of hours. The airport has set up a reception centre for relatives of those who were on board. We will have all the latest. Good evening. An Air India flight that was bound for London Gatwick has crashed just after taking off from the city of Ahmedabad. 242 people were on board the Boeing 787 aircraft, including 53 Britons. This evening, it's been confirmed that one of the passengers, Vishwas Kumar Ramesh, who is from the UK, miraculously survived. An investigation into what caused the crash is now underway, with the UK's Air Accident Investigation Branch sending inspectors to help. A warning, this report from our international correspondent Alex Rossi does contain footage that you may find distressing.
It was clear almost immediately that the Air India flight was in serious trouble. Less than a minute after takeoff, the aircraft began losing altitude before a massive explosion filled the sky. This CCTV footage shows what happened from another angle. The aeroplane fails to gain height, flying low and flat before the moment of impact. A mayday call had been made just before it came down. Fully loaded with fuel, the Boeing Dreamliner crashed into a residential area at 1:38 p.m. local time. The flight was bound for London's Gatwick airport. Thick black smoke filled the sky, rising above rooftops. 242 people were on board. That number includes 53 British nationals. Miraculously, there are survivors. This is Vishwa Kumar Ramesh, who was travelling with a family member. He's now recovering in hospital. The airline has set up an emergency helpline for the relatives of those on board.
The injured passengers have been taken by local authorities to the nearest hospitals. We are actively working with the authorities on all emergency response efforts. A special team of caregivers from Air India